the willingness and the intent to further the body cam process. So that goes without saying. But notwithstanding that intent, and we understand that there would be matters of procurement, etc. We do not go into the backroom basis. What Indicom is saying, we are desirous of seeing the implementation of body-worn cameras, and we inquire through our interviews whether an officer would have been issued with, trained in the use of, or activated a body-worn camera.
Hear you on that. Hear you on that. Have to go, Commissioner. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you, SSP Brooks. That's all the time we have. Nico Lewis is lining up for the news at 7.
Kingston, Jamaica. This is CVM News at noon for Tuesday, February 4, 2024. This is CVM News at noon, like I said earlier, and I'm Ramon Gordon. Let's dive right in. Norman Brown has abandoned his legal challenge against the Integrity Commission's referral to the Tax Administration of Jamaica and the Financial Investigation Division. The Supreme Court had granted him 14 days to file for judicial review, but he failed to do so. In a statement today, the Integrity Commission said while they were confident of success, they welcomed Brown's decision. And opposition spokesperson Philip Paulwell is pushing for a major overhaul of Jamaica's energy sector with a strong focus on renewable solutions, particularly solar power. Here's more from Britannia Witter.
Solar energy is the way to go. That's the word from opposition spokesperson on energy Philip Paulwell.
A revolution is going to happen with solar technology.
Speaking at a People's National Party tour of Clarendon, Paulwell, a former energy minister, outlined a plan to shift the nation towards more sustainable and affordable energy sources, with solar power at the forefront.
We are going to, in our first 3 years as a government, going to establish 200 megawatts of solar capacity in Jamaica. And the price for solar has dropped. You can generate solar energy at about 9 cents US per kilowatt hour.
He says under a future PNP government, the party will implement policies that will significantly increase the use of solar energy across the island. One of the central pillars of the PNP's energy strategy, according to the spokesperson, will be providing accessible loans to Jamaicans for setting up solar infrastructure.
You can get a loan, and we are going to provide low-cost loans as a government. You can get a loan to establish a facility at your home that you can pay back in 4 years, your solar system. And after you've paid for it in 4 years, for the next 16 years, it is costing you zero. It is for free.
With the Jamaican government already exploring renewable energy options and offering tax credit towards acquisition and installation of solar panels, the opposition's promise is expected to generate discussion heading into the next general election. Britannia Witter, CVM News.
Cancer remains a deadly disease, and its reach is expanding. While there's no known cure, the Health Ministry is ramping up efforts to catch it early. Here's Trisha Gay Kelly with that story.
Cancer is one of the deadliest diseases known to man and understandably one of the most feared as well. Locally, the disease is spreading quite rapidly. It's the reason the Ministry of Health and Wellness has introduced more oncology centers island-wide. Researchers and foundations have partnered with the oncology center linked to the Mandeville Regional Hospital in Manchester to dig deeper into the nature of the disease. Consultant hematologist Dr. Jamie Foote says shocking revelations surfaced in the latest research.
What is extremely scary is the presentation of cancer in younger patients. For example, multiple myeloma, which is usually a disease of the elderly. We're seeing younger and younger patients. This affects the bone and it can cause significant morbidity, bone pain, and even affect your ability to ambulate, to walk. We have early presentation, patients in their 20s of breast cancer.
When the oncology center first opened for business, there were only 5 patients. To date, the facility caters to some 600 patients, a concern in the growth rate of the disease. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton is urging citizens to get tested regularly.
Because when we think cancer, we think death. And that has a finality to it that clearly is scary. But the opportunity for treatment and indeed for longer life or for normal life based on early detection is a real opportunity, and therefore in many other cases, and therefore we want to encourage the early detection through screening.
Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
Indicom Commissioner Hugh Fauna is renewing calls for the police to wear body cameras, stressing that data doesn't lie. Speaking on CVM's lead story, he highlighted body cams as a key to accountability and transparency in policing.
Policy without data sometimes may be suspect. But when you look at the data for January of 2025, 28 fatalities were recorded. And from my recollection, none had indicated the use of a body-worn camera. If there was any, it would have been in one instance. And in 2024, as indicated by the previous data of 252 shootings and fatal shooting incidents, and we had 189 fatalities, none recorded the use of a body-worn camera. You know, George, the key word in a discussion of this nature is accountability. And I think accountability would be the word, would be the sentence, would be the paragraph, and would be the essay.
SSP Dennis Brooks says while the police are not against body-worn cameras, an immediate rollout would not be feasible due to several challenges. His comments come amid renewed calls for wider use of technology.
My challenge with the argument is that it's a non-starter. And I think that persons, listening to the Vox Pop, it is clear that the person's expressions are a reflection of the narratives that have been allowed to dominate because of the things that are said repeatedly which are not true. So there's this notion that the police don't want to wear them or are resisting them. There's this constant notion of that, and I'm saying it's an absolute false narrative.
So why are they being worn?
Well, in a law enforcement entity of the size of the JCF with over 8,000 operational members, we are larger than many police forces in states in the US, and they don't have 100% rollout. I have done the research. I have looked at even in discussions of body cams in NYPD, and they talk about the gradual rollout. In a country like Jamaica, we have to understand that body cameras are extremely expensive to roll out and ensure that they are widespread.
And preserving Jamaica's musical heritage remains a pressing issue. And Jamaica Music Museum Director and Curator Herbie Miller is once again leading the charge. He's launched this year's Grow Nation series and exhibition under the theme From African to Jamaica, Music and Black Culture. He told us more this morning on Sunrise.
It is contextualized around Kamau Brathwaite's idea of creolization.
Creolization.
So from African to Jamaican, something happened in between that to make us Jamaican. And that is how we took a whole African culture, a whole African self, outside of African plantations in the West, to create a culture, be it African American, Brazilian, Cuban, Haitian, Jamaican, whatever. Each has a unique culture. From the gods we worship, the ancestors, the way we walk, talk, cook, name it. It derives out of the slave experience that we creolize. And as Ms. Lee would say, wheel it and turn it into something else. And that's what they will see. For example, in the very opening of the exhibition, you'll see an Igungun costume and an Igungun mask, which is a masquerade in Nigeria, to a Pichi-Pachi costume with a Pichi-Pachi mask, which is very similar but different. The exhibition is still a work in progress. It's basically there, it's just to be tagged and labeled, but it has been opened to the patrons of Grow Nation as of Sunday. So come early, browse the exhibition. The official opening will be announced later on. So right now, only for Grow Nation, not throughout the week. It's open to those who attend.
Stay with us. Our discussion segment is next.
Marley. I am Nige Boy, and I am proud to support the Sagicor Sigma corporate run.
We need your help to raise $115 million for our 3 beneficiaries.
The Kingston Public Hospital Intensive Care Unit,
the Sir John Golding Rehabilitation Center, and Father Holong and Friends Foundation.
Register today for the Sagicor Sigma Run,
or donate to the cause at sagicorsigmarun.com.
Pure Jamaican ginger, make your tea. Flavor up your drinks. And spice up your cooking. Everything tastes better with a toops of pure ginger.
Welcome back. It's time for our discussion segment. The Trump administration has moved to pause U.S. aid. The agency responsible for billions in humanitarian aid across over 100 countries, including Jamaica. The move could significantly affect several Jamaican government agencies and non-profit organizations, including the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI. Joining us to discuss the potential impact is CAPRI's Director of Research, Dr. Diana Thorburn. Dr. Thorburn, again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm very acutely aware of the immediate impacts of this pause. I have friends working in this space, and currently, as you're well aware, they're without work. When you heard of the news, certainly, what was your reaction to it?
Had many reactions. I can say for Capri that we have not been a direct recipient of USAID funds I asked in the organization this morning when was the last time we got a grant from them, and no one could remember. We have been what's called a sub-grantee, however, over the past, I would say 5 to 6 years, with the sub-grants from National Integrity Action and Equality for All Jamaica, which has allowed us to do some of our most important work, including on plastic bag recycling, plastic bottle recycling, LGBT health issues, and environmental governance. So even though we are not directly impacted in the bigger scheme of things, it is not a good sign for us as a nonprofit doing the kind of work that we do. So that was a first thought. But, I think another thought that we probably don't want to think about, but that we should, is that we've established for ourselves in this space, in the nonprofit space, in the NGO, CSO space, an expectation of others funding our work. And it's a very uncomfortable conversation, but I think that this might be an opportune time for us to have it.
Very well.
Which is, are there unrealistic and unreasonable expectations? Which is to say that if this work is so important, why are we looking to others to fund it?
Dr. Thorburn, you're preempting a conversation I want to have later on, so let me reel it back just a bit. A lot of the issues you outlined earlier have to do with development issues, yes? So for those agencies that rely primarily on USAID funding, what do you foresee as the short to long-term consequences for development locally? Because like you said, these funds are needed to fund a lot of the very important conversations being had.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have to also be clear for Jamaica that USAID funding to Jamaica has been on the downward trajectory since 2018. For the past 6 years, there's been a steady decline in USAID funding to Jamaica specifically. And so we have to be mindful that the impact is not going to be a wholesale fallout of several programs or organizations or programs of work. The main areas that USAID has been funding in Jamaica in the past 6 years within that downward trajectory of funding is public health and HIV. They have been one of the main funders for most of the work done on HIV in Jamaica. So that cutoff is potentially very damaging to that effort, which is extremely important. A lot of their funding has gone from direct military and security force assistance to social interventions, youth opportunities for at-risk youth. They had a big project, which I don't know what's going to happen to, which is to provide support for victims and perpetrators of violence. So those are the kind of programs that I suppose are now in question. I don't know to what extent the funding that has been committed has come through yet. I know that many of these are 3 and 4 year projects. So, that's a big in question. There was some funding towards climate resilience. So in terms of what the impact is going to be, I think we have to be very specific about where the funding was actually going, where it's now, where there's now going to be a shortfall. I would say the most important to my mind and one that I would be the most concerned about would be HIV prevention. As you might know, a lot of the work that Capri has been doing on security lately has been recommending a deprioritization of the kind of social interventions that USAID has been funding, which may be one of the reasons why we haven't gotten any funding from them lately.
Doc, let's go back to the conversation you prefaced earlier. Looking elsewhere for funding. You said that over the past several years, USAID funding has been on the decline. And with this Trump administration halting for 90 days for Jamaica, and for this Trump administration halting for for 90 days in the first instance, USAID funding. For those who rely on this funding for their programs, the conversation that should be had now, tell us, what should it be?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. Every organization like Capri spends a good portion of their time and energy thinking about and looking for funding. And if we go back to what I was saying earlier about the absence of local funding, whether from the Jamaican private sector or from the state, all of us are constantly engaged in, for some of us, it's a struggle for survival. For others of us, it's a question of where will we be in 4 or 5 years? This development will force us to have to grapple with even more. There are a lot of foundations in the US, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Bezos, I can't remember her name, Foundation, several other charitable foundations that are likely, I'm going to venture, will step into a lot of these funding gaps, particularly in areas like HIV, which are generally important to the donor community across the world. So I don't think it's going to be all doom and gloom, but it will, I would say, exacerbate the existing challenge for organizations like ours, which are dependent on overseas funding for our very existence.
Now, maybe time to look within the region for collaboration?
Those are, I hate to be cynical, but I want to be realistic in this conversation. That's magical thinking. Those are great ideas about, looking to CARICOM or other Caribbean regional organizations. But funding the type of work that NGOs and CSOs like Capri does